All right, Jake, we are probably slightly behind schedule this month.
Yeah.
But, we're traveling. It happens. But I think it's
been a busy also.
Yeah, true. And also, I feel like compared to our, schedule commitment we had on HV203, still improvement.
Oh, yeah, it's more than once a year. So that's, we're doing very, very well. We should say, I mean, how kind of proper are we supposed to do this? Like, because, who are you? What's going on?
Oh, who am I? What's going on? I'm Surma. This is a podcast. And this...
and I am Jake.
Oh,
so I was trying to do
realize.
An intro.
Okay.
Look, so the State of React came out, right? And what's there in the podcast section? HTTP 203.
Right.
Not OTMT. And I just don't think we're ever going to, beat our previous selves if we are this sloppy, if we're just like...
you say that, but HTTP 203 was pretty sloppy. Obviously, we had professional editors. We also still have a professional editor, but we are doing more of the work ourselves. And for some reason that has brought us to I think the reason OTMT is not on the State of React is because that survey came out before we even started with OTMT.
Okay, we'll keep telling ourselves that and we'll see what happens. But
if we're still not on there by next year, then I guess we'll just keep talking to our 3.5 listeners.
That's fine. That's fine by me.
Yeah.
So who's a half listener? Because it's me, you, Lucas, our editor, and it's just someone overhearing Lucas in another room. Is that it?
Yeah, I feel like it was mostly Lucas because he's not listening to the words we're saying. He's just waiting for someone to bang on the table and just cut that noise out, isn't he?
That's fine.
Well,
yeah,
and doing, sense. And making us sound actually coherent, which honestly, sometimes he does do that.
A lot of work.
Yeah. A lot of hard work.
So I went to Silverstone recently, for the Grand Prix. Which I tend to do every couple of years. And it reminded me of something which happened last time I was there. So last time I went to the track on a Thursday. Now, there isn't motorsport as such on a Thursday, but what they do have is the Sky TV folks do their live show.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like they do power walking tournaments or something.
Well...
Oh.
Interesting you should say that. Well, so their show is just like they bring the drivers out, they do interviews, that kind of thing. But it's on the start-finish straight, and if you want to get decent seats, you got to turn up like fairly early. So we did. And we were there like an hour and a half before anything was going to happen, and we weren't alone. Like there was a lot of people in the stand just kind of sitting, waiting. So people were entertaining themselves. And one thing they were doing is like, so there is stuff happening on the track. Like there are people who are running it. There are road sweepers. There are people who are cycling it.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. So the engineers do it just for exercise, right? Because they're flying around the world from track to track, and it's something they do for exercise. But it is also what people they do it to see if there's any new bumps on the track as well. There are scouts that feed back to the drivers.
Oh.
So whenever someone came round the final corner on their sweeper or their bike or whatever, the crowd would start going, oh, as they got closer and closer to the start-finish straight. And as they crossed the finish line, the crowd would go, way! And it was at this point, the person cycling or the person in the sweeper would have to acknowledge the crowd in some way and wave. And if they didn't, the whole crowd would boo really, really loudly. That was it. They would turn on you instantly. So we were doing this for 45 minutes or whatever. And then around the final corner came a child or a young kid in an electric wheelchair. And you could see that the whole crowd was thrown into a kind of quandary of like, what's the etiquette here? Like, we've got a system, we've got a thing we do here, but is it appropriate? What do we do?
Yeah, of course you cheer them on.
Well, that's it. Someone started. Oh, and the rest of the crowd started building up. Oh, and this kid crossed the start-finish line, and he pumped his fist in the air.
Yes,
and
he did.
The whole stadium went crazy. I think there was more cheering than there was at any point during the actual Grand Prix. People were on their feet cheering. It was like,
that's amazing.
It was a lovely thing to be part of. But there was a guy on the track, kind of around the start finish line, and he sort of walked around just to the final corner, and he put his phone on a selfie stick, extended it, and then he clearly sort of started recording, and he was, talking into his phone, and he was sort of gesturing at the audience, and then he set off running towards the finish line with his selfie stick in a hand, sort of pointing, sort of, between him and so the crowds would be behind him, and he walked and he ran fast to the finish line, and the crowd gave him nothing. I would also have done that. Not even a boo.
Doing it for the gram, you're not getting anything.
Absolutely. He crossed that finish line to almost deadly silence, and it made me proud to be British.
So petty but effective. I love
Absolutely. I don't get patriotic very often, but that was one of those moments.
Yeah, because even like a boo would have been, content, but the fact that there's like the instant hive mind of doing the correct thing, that he basically just now has footage of him running across a finish line by himself, and visually, or like on the video, nobody cares. That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we're not doing it on demand. If you want this, you're not getting it. Should we talk about the web?
Let's talk about the web, because I feel like in the last month, it's been some, spicy things. I guess at this point, people already know what the episode is titled.
Do we know what the episode is titled? Or does that come later?
Yeah, so I was going to say, my current pick is Chrome's secretly installed extensions.
Oh, that is good. I like it.
There's a bit of spice in there. So this whole thing got started by a tweet that Luca did. And Luca is an engineer at Dino.
Yes.
Lovely guy, really talented, does, loads of engineering in the Dino front end. The Dino back end is also on TC's 39 and on the Winter CG, and just like, I honestly don't know how he juggles it all. And I suppose in his work, while, spelunking the Chromium code base, because he works a lot with V8, but also with Chromium, I suppose, over a piece of source code in the Chromium source base, which is a Google Meet extension, like literally same, as if it was a normal Chrome extension you install from the Chrome extension store or whatever that's called, but it's installed by default and it doesn't shop in the extension list, and you can't disable it.
It's not sounding good, but what does it do?
Right. So, and he was also saying, it's also in Brave, and it's in Arc, and it's in Edge, and it's likely in all other Chromium derivatives as well. So I was also like,
oh, interesting, because we should say that Chrome and Chromium are technically different things. Like you've got Chromium is the open source project that Brave,
exactly,
Opera, Arc feed off, and then you've got Chrome, which is kind of the closed source version, which has some extra bits. I think that's where some of the video codec stuff goes into. That's less open source. It's where I think some of the DRM stuff, which we all love, goes in. But this, which kind of feels like it sits on more that sort of side of things.
Yeah.
But no, this is in Chromium.
So that's where I immediately, and Luca said this as well, he had a fairly long thread where he said, I don't think this is actually malicious or harmful. It's just, and I want to dive into the whole dissection of what it is, and is it good? Is it bad? Is it not? But my immediate thought was as well, he linked to the Chromium source code with a link, and it was in Chromium. So therefore, it's not really a secret. It's out there. All of the other people who build on top of Chromium would have to know about it or just have missed it. If it was malicious, it would have been a lot smarter by Google to put it into Chrome, which is the closed source thing to get added to Chromium, which I think also has stuff like the whole logging into your Google account and syncing your tabs, which I'm assuming that code can't necessarily be fully open, but also, like you said, the DRM stuff for, Netflix to play video, so you can take screenshots and stuff, to maintain that whole chain of trust.
But the important thing you said there is that it's not malicious.
Yeah.
So nothing to see here. Happy next time.
Well,
bye-bye.
That was my hunch, but I did want to check, and okay. I think so did many others, because obviously that tweet got attention, and loads of people were saying yeah, you should have been using Brave all along. And he was like, yep, it's in Brave as well. Go try it out. Right. So, what does it do? Let's actually look at that. Like I said, it's a completely in that sense, normal Chrome extension.
Except hidden. It's so normal, they've decided to hide it.
Yeah, I meant in the terms of the code, that it's like the language is written. It's just JavaScript, same API. It could be just as well a public Chrome extension. There's no special abilities granted to that extension apart from being installed by default.
Okay.
So this Chrome extension, as any Chrome extension, filters the domains in which it is active. And this one is filtered to all Google subdomains.
Right. Oh, so it's not just Meet.
No. So that's already, I think, where, that raises eyebrows. It basically, I think the filter is quite literally star.google.com.
I mean, my eyebrows were already raised. They're kind of off my head entirely at this point. They're up on the ceiling. It's slightly terrifying.
It's a great look. And from skimming the code, what it seems to do is it adds additional APIs to the global in which that extension is active, which allows that tab to know about the computer's CPU usage, this specific tab's CPU usage, the GPU usage, and the JavaScript memory consumption. And that's pretty much it. There's also some logging happening, which I don't understand why this needed to be in the extension. I think it was just convenience for them. But in the end, logging, kind of like somebody opened this URL, you can just do with the beacon API or something. So I don't know why that is in there because, it's not in any way special. From what Luca said and showed is that this extension is used by Google Meet, and Google Meet is also in the title of the extension's name, exclusively, in the troubleshooting panel. So if you go to like a 3-dot menu and there's like a troubleshooting menu point, that dialog is supposed to help you figure out why your meeting is maybe not working as expected or why you're having issues. And to be able to give better advice of what is going wrong or what you should try, they want to have access to these data points, which are not available as a normal web API.
So what was it? You said it was CPU state. Did you say memory state as well?
Well, yeah, it was CPU usage, also like globally, but also specific to the tab, GPU usage, and JavaScript memory consumption.
Okay.
So, they can do stuff like, hey, it looks like your GPU is pretty, bogged down. Maybe you can close one of the 3 games you're currently running or something. Like, I wouldn't know what you have running, obviously, because that is not exposed. But I think that's kind of like the kind of data they want. And they even draw a CPU graph, I guess, to show you your CPU is bogged down. So if you open this in Safari, that part of the dialog just is blank and says, hey, use Chrome if you want more help.
Right. And so we can say like, it seems like the intent with these APIs is good. And it's not like doing anything totally crazy, but this represents, Chrome has given itself an advantage by bypassing web standards.
Exactly. So I think I fully agree with the assessment. It seems to me that this extension doesn't do anything evil, and it probably was born out of the need and desire to help users to make Meet work. Some people were saying like this data that they're exposing could be an additional fingerprinting vector.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah.
But at the same time, and Luca said this as well, it's like, well, you're already logged into Google when you use Meet. I think
that's fair.
We are beyond fingerprinting in this context, and this extension is scoped. Some other people are also worrying like, hey, cool, I can abuse this by just like you having a custom DNS setup. And if I put myself on a Google subdomain, I get access to this.
Presumably all of these, like the GPU monitoring, CPU monitoring is available to other extensions as well. So yeah. Okay. So rather than messing around with DNS, your easier thing you could do is just write an extension.
Well, even then, the extension is scoped to HTTPS, so you would also have to have a custom certificate installed. And once you install custom certificates, I think you have bigger security problems going anyway, because then other things can be stolen as well. So I feel like in that sense, they did it the best way possible. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's like, in terms of like, it's not a secret. There's a thread on Blink Dev where contributors from Edge and I think even other browsers are talking about this extension in the code base and whether it should be revisited at some point. So yeah, it's not a secret. It seems harmless. It seems like the additional APIs that are being exposed cannot be really exploited or could be used by other parties that are not supposed to have access. But like you said, does that make it okay? And I feel like the answer is still kind of no.
Well, so recently Apple Maps has been released for the web. And if you try to go to that site on Chrome or Firefox, you get a blanket no. It's like, especially if you're on Mac.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's very much like you should use Safari, and it's an artificial limiting thing, because I think if you're on Windows, you can use Chrome, something like that. It is just like we're Apple. You should use Safari if you can.
No, if you're on Apple, use Safari. If you're somewhere else, I guess we'll let you through.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I think that's bad for the openness of the web. So what we're seeing Chrome do here is at least as bad as that. I mean, so Meet now does work in Firefox, does work in Safari. There were times when that wasn't true, but they are creating a better experience in Chrome through a hidden extension. And you would think if it was if it was something they were proud of doing, it wouldn't be a hidden extension, would it?
And I keep thinking about that as well. So like someone dug up the original PR when this was added. And at the time, this is apparently in 2013, it was scoped to Hangouts. Like even on the URL, I think it was scoped to google.com/Hangouts. So it was Hangouts only. No other Google product could use these APIs. In fact, currently it is, as I said, like available to all Google subdomains. I do not know if any other Google product uses the abilities of this extension, but I also understand why they increased the scope. Like, why is it available to all Google products when it's specific? That's just something I find a bit iffy. It seems unnecessary.
I mean, the whole thing is iffy, but yes, that in particular, is Chrome giving itself an advantage? Like, of course, Safari could add the same hidden extension, and they could add the same non-standard APIs to Google Meet, and in order to create the same extension. But that is very, very similar to what was happening in the old IE days, where Microsoft would just add whatever API they wanted, and it was down to the other browsers to reverse engineer it. It's not. I mean, okay, this is limited to a set of domains, but in some ways that's worse on another axis, right? So we're saying it's bad because Hangouts on Chrome can have this better experience than Hangouts on Safari through artificial means, but you can also say, well, hang on, now Zoom is having a worse experience than Hangouts.
Yes.
Through this. And like, if they wanted to have that similar experience, yes, they could create an extension, but they would have to get you to install that extension. They don't have the benefit of it being, installed on the sly, by default. I mean, I guess I will say the word anti-competitive as not a lawyer, but
no, that's exactly what other people have been saying as well. They were saying, like, at least with our EU hat on, this could probably be quite, realistically framed as anti-competitive, because exactly that example was brought up as well, where Zoom now potentially has less abilities or a worse experience than what Google Meet offers in Chrome. And it's mostly about the fact that it's installed by default, enabled by default, and hidden, and can't be disabled. And what I find really weird, because it's clearly not critical for operation, this extension, because it works, Hangouts or Meet works just fine in Firefox and Safari as is.
Does it work on Android Chrome? Because there's no extensions on Android Chrome.
I haven't tested that. I assume they would push you towards the app, maybe?
Yeah. Oh, they definitely do.
Yeah, so I was like, if I, just used Hangouts and I went to the troubleshooting dialog, and then they went, hey, if you install this extension, we can help you troubleshoot better. Legit? That seems completely fine to me. Like, that's an opt-in, and that is basically even playing field, because any other provider could also write such an extension.
Yes, a lot of these APIs actually went through the standards process because at the time Firefox OS wanted them.
Ah, Firefox OS, yes.
Yeah, so they just wanted everything that you could do on native, really, at the time. But these APIs were rejected because of, well, eventually, like, Firefox didn't want them because of Firefox OS kind of going away. But the problem was fingerprinting. And as you say, it's not so bad in this case if you are logged in. But, I mean, from what I understand, like, if this is available to all Google sites, then, these things can be accessed when you're not logged in.
Yeah.
And certainly the web standards version could be. It doesn't have the concept of logged in at all. So yeah, I mean, there are good reasons why these APIs were not taken forward. So kind of just adding them again on the sly is a bit not great.
So I wonder why this extension is around and installed by default. And so I dug a bit deeper, especially because people were, tagging in all the other Chromium derivatives like Brave and Vivaldi and asking, is this true? And they were like, yes, it's true. And at that time, that extension was necessary for Hangouts to work. So I think at the time, just the web platform hadn't evolved enough to make something like Hangouts work. That was before it was renamed to Meet across browsers just based on web APIs. I think WebRTC probably wasn't quite there, and some other APIs maybe too.
That was the reason why for a long time it didn't work in Firefox and Safari. There was like a particular WebRTC something. Like even when there was some support in other browsers, there was a couple of methods that Google claimed were essential for this and could justify not allowing Safari and Firefox access on those. But they were fixed. Yeah, that has changed.
So for example, Vivaldi weighed in on this thread. I don't know who from Vivaldi, but they have their browser account on X. And they replied with, yeah, we know about this and we expose it in the settings. So it is enabled by default, but they very much make it a setting. We can go like, no, I don't want this extension to be enabled by default. Brendan Eich weighed in from the perspective of Brave. And he said, it used to be enabled by default, but they used a patched version. So they disabled the logging parts, but still left the other APIs in there to give a consistent experience from Chrome to Brave.
Which is interesting because, as you said, the logging bits feel like, well, logging isn't exactly a new capability on the web.
No. But what's really interesting that he then later linked to PR, and that was probably, I assume, spawned by the thread that Luca started, that they have it now fully disabled because, and they have a comment in, their commit history, that they actively knew about and kept this extension because when this whole thing started, you needed it for Meet to work. And they obviously wanted people to be able to stay in Brave and attend a Meet without having to switch back to Chrome. So they left it enabled. But as I said, it works cross browser now. All the mission critical things that Meet needs are on the web platform and are supported cross.
But even what you said there is highlights what's wrong with doing this. It's another browser has to adopt these Google designed APIs exposed to Google sites, because if they don't, then Hangouts Meet doesn't work.
Well, that's what I was just saying. I think now they have realized that statement isn't true anymore. You can disable this extension and Meet will continue to work because it works in Safari now, for example, as well, without any extensions. So it feels to me that this, again, the very original extension for Hangouts was born to make this product a thing, virtual meetings. Platform evolved, less and less capabilities need to be crowbarred into the browser via extension and could just be built on top of the web platform. And this extension just kind of continued to exist and was slightly adapted and evolved. And technically it's not needed anymore, but people kind of forgot about it, seems to be my takeaway. Because just now Brave was like, oh, we can actually disable this because Meet continues to work. The only thing that won't work is the troubleshooting dialogue where you get a CPU graph, and I don't know, I'm okay with that by default. They could probably inject a little, hey, if you want the graph, we can enable the extension for you or something. So it seems overall an artifact of history and probably harmless, but I also think stuff like this still burns user trust.
Oh, absolutely. Has Chrome said anything about this? Has Google said anything about this?
No.
Okay.
As far as I know, there has been no official statement. I assume that they revised history probably more thoroughly than I have and came to the conclusion this is all harmless and not worth giving attention to, which I'm not sure I agree with. I guess the majority of public users didn't even notice this. In terms of waves within the web development community, I thought it was quite big. I think it's one of those tweets from Luca which went to 1,000 likes and above, so it definitely got eyes on it. But people love a good outcry and outrage, but I think nothing major has come of it. But I think it's just one of those things, a bit of carelessness and a bit of questionable decision making that just now look really dodgy.
I agree. So I wonder if Google had the same journey here, that they had the extension for, to make Hangouts Meet work at all. Again, I question the ethics of that decision, but when that strong requirement went away, maybe no one asked the question, should this be around anymore? It's well, people aren't, or if they did ask, it's well, people aren't complaining about it, so why not have this slightly better user experience through this slightly shady method? The
questions were definitely asked on Blinkdev. So there was someone asking, hey, do we still need this? At a quick skim at this code, it looks like it just does some, GPU, CPU stuff and some logging. they're like, yeah, we could probably rework this. I don't think we can land these APIs, and so that there were definitely people bringing up the questions, and Chromies were replying. So there was a prompt for them to maybe revisit this, but they didn't. And yet, that's, again, not to paint a picture of them actively turning a blind eye to leave the evil extension running, but more like people are busy and have better things to do. But also,
I mean, that is kind of the definition of turning a blind eye. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm angrier about this than you are. Like, I don't like this. I think Chrome should remove it, especially.
I agree.
Now, if it's just a tiny little, if I was working at Google still, this would make me really angry because, like you say, it is so much trust burned.
Yeah.
For so little. I mean, well, like you say, it maybe hasn't sort of taken off in dev communities, so maybe they haven't burned a lot of trust, but I feel, I would feel like it's something there that anyone who doesn't like Chrome or, other browser vendors would just be able to, if I'm in a standards group and I try and say to someone, hey, you can't just ship that without standards effort, all they'll have to say is like, well, you install this stuff in the background all the time. I mean, so what,
yeah.
You don't care about this stuff. And like, well, yeah.
And Chrome gains so little from this extension at this point.
And that's it. It's not for anything anymore. I mean, it's such a small thing now. It's not worth it. It is not worth burning the trust over it.
So I'm going to link to all of this in the description. Curious if people want to take a look and form their own opinion on the original PR, the dev link discussion, Luca's whole thread, the commit, Brendan Eich stuff. I'd be curious to hear from our 3.5 listeners what they think, and how angry are they? Because as I say, I'm not like angry, but also I've become increasingly indifferent, because it sounds harsh, but like, this is not the first time we have discovered something weird about how Chrome operates, and it almost feels a bit par for the course at this point.
I am angry about it, and like, again, I just have to keep asking myself, like, how would I feel if it was Apple doing this?
Yeah,
who I kind of got, I guess, historical beef with in terms of, their attitude towards the web. And yeah, I'd be really angry about it, and I am. I think it would be a nice step for them just to remove that extension and maybe do a bit of like a post-mortem blog post on it.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a reasonable-ish story that you could tell behind it, and certainly a nice thing to kind of end and say, look, maybe we should have removed this sooner, but we have removed it now.
Yeah, maybe just like, what is the process for solving a product need at the time, but also making sure you don't forget about it and put in the effort to remove it once that need has evaporated? Because I wonder, it also makes you think, how much more is there in Chromium or Chrome, especially in Chrome where we can't see it, but even in Chromium, because, we worked at Google for a good number of years and know how to read lots of code, but I still am not someone to easily navigate the Chromium code base and figure out where would you hide this stuff, or say hide, where would you place this stuff? Where could I find all these other, if there are others, default installed, hidden, uninstallable extensions that maybe do other things?
Yeah. Well, that speaks to the burn trust thing. There's a lot of folks who, get a little bit towards conspiracy theory stuff with Google and the web. But yeah, I think it's very reasonable and very easy to say, like, well, if they're doing this in plain sight, what else are they doing? Because it's a big smoking gun right there.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Well, do you know what? It's great we don't have to deal with this anymore in terms of like,
exactly,
trying to fix it.
We don't have to defend it or apologize for it or try to push both sides. Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking as well. Sometimes it's nice to just be able to lean back and eat the popcorn, which is kind of what I did while scrolling that tweet. It's very refreshing. But I figure that is probably enough dystopian bleakness.
Oh, until next time.
Until next time, where OTMD comes back with more dystopian bleakness and tangents. That's a good tagline.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
This is a tight 30 minutes as well. Nice. All right.
Ooh, look at us go. Well, I guess then at this point, there's the usual left to say. Happy next time.
Happy next time. Bye.